We're here to make a new type of news.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Making news just for you. It's April 12th here in Seoul. I'm Shin-Yoon, and this is News Generation, where we make the news at Arirang's very own open studio. Every morning, we'll discuss the top issues and latest current affairs affecting people in their 20s and 30s. Joining me in the studio is Nal Song.
Good morning, everyone.
And Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. Let's start with our news feed, a news feed which covers different hashtags and news items that have been trending on social media over the past 24 hours. Two people fainted on the subway line of Gimpo City in Gyeonggi-do Province on Tuesday because it was jam-packed. One was a teen and another was in her 30s. They both rode the subway during the morning rush hour between 7 and 8 a.m. Paramedics soon came to treat them, and both passengers had major headaches and difficulty breathing. Moving on, after hearing this news, you may want to check twice before making an in-person payment for a delivery, because recently police indicted 4 people from a delivery company over committing card fraud worth around $13,000. The method behind their crimes was using an illegal card replicator. They would ask customers to slide their card 2 times, once on the replicator and the second on the actual payment machine. And moving on to the third one, the Dalai Lama has apologized over a viral video showing the spiritual leader kissing a child on the lips and then asking him to, quote, suck his tongue. In a statement on Monday, the Dalai Lama said he wishes to apologize to the boy and his family, and the current Dalai Lama is Tenzin Gyatso, the best-known living Buddhist figure in the world. Now let's go a bit deeper into the last news item. While many people condemn the Dalai Lama's actions as a form of child abuse, one Tibetan lawmaker in exile tried defending the spiritual leader. Take a listen to what he had to say.
It's a part of joke. It's such a part of like a play with a child. So we should not go to more than that.
So this Tibetan lawmaker said it's part of a joke. It's like playing with a child. It was totally innocent. But what are your thoughts on this, Walter?
I mean, what a strange story, right? Like, it's such a weird thing to say. I've actually met the Dalai Lama before, and luckily he didn't ask me to suck his tongue. It was a weird situation. However, yes, it's such a weird, I can't even imagine a culture where that would be acceptable.
Right.
And yes, it's very bad. I mean, to be devil's advocate, let's give him the benefit of the doubt, and he was just trying to be innocent, but yeah, it was totally unacceptable.
It's quite disturbing.
Yeah,
no matter what the
was.
intentions was, the action was clearly wrong. But what about you, Nell? What did you first think about when you heard this news?
Guys, I actually saw this news first thing in the morning yesterday at 5 a.m. when I woke up, and I was like, is this some kind of joke? What is this? And my gut instinct was, gross, you know? And no matter how playful and what kind of a joke they're playing, I don't think it's appropriate for the global audience to see. And, you know, we should talk about consent. And obviously, yes, this is child abuse. And I don't know. It just didn't seem very convincing what they were trying to do as an excuse for him. So
definitely
not okay with that.
Child abuse, whatever the intentions were, whatever the motives were, it's inexcusable no matter what. And that was our news feed for this Wednesday. Moving on, we're going to jump into our main discussion now. More Korean food businesses are expanding overseas thanks to K-dramas, and K-food naturally exposed their flourishing. And what's the first taste you think of when you think of K-food? For many here, it's spice. And to find out more about today's topic, take a look at the screen. The spicier, the better. That seems to be what many in Korea look for in their food. Market data shows that since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, sales of spicy food at convenience stores have increased by at least 20%. Analysts believe this was because many people wanted to relieve stress. It's no surprise that Koreans love their food spicy. The Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs found that Koreans consume 165,000 tons of chili peppers every year. That's around 3.3 kilograms of chili peppers per Korean each year. Today, NewsGen looks at 3 questions. 1. When did Korean food start getting spicy? 2. How much do young Koreans love spicy food? Why has this extremely hot food trend been popular among millennials and Gen Z abroad as well? 3. What are some pros and cons behind this eating trend? Koreans' love for spicy food is becoming a global trend, and that's because many people want to try Korean food themselves. And before we go further into the discussion, why don't you two here in the studio tell us how Korean food, and specifically spicy dishes, have been gaining popularity abroad?
You know, I want to talk about the time I lived in Morocco, and back in the early 2000s to 2010s, there really wasn't much access to Korean food, and there was a tiny community of Koreans, maybe a couple hundred, and people tried starting up businesses, selling Korean food, and the businesses failed every time. They shut down because nobody was looking for Korean food other than the small number of community that was there. And then I guess later in the 2010s, Psy's Gangnam Style, BTS, taking over the world, and the buldak spicy noodle challenge, and now everybody wants to try it. So people have actually started selling them, and as I understand it, it's quite successful nowadays. So that's how I see the change in popularity in Korean food from where I used to live. And all that to explain, because I didn't have access to such spicy food, that's why I'm a 맵찔이, or also known as a level 1 spicy person. So I'm not good with spicy food at all.
I see. And with more people watching K-dramas and having their favorite K-pop celebrity eating them, I think a lot of people are curious to find out what this tastes like. But Walter, how would you explain how popular Korean dishes are abroad?
Yeah, so I'll go to the example of Australia. Now, I love Korean food. When I go back to Australia, I even have to eat Korean food while I go back for that week off. But whenever I go into the restaurants, there are usually tons of people, always full, but not just of Korean people, it's of many different cultures. So it's great to see how good Korean food has, how popular Korean food has become. Now, obviously, I think a lot of Westerners in Australia, they like the bibimbap, which is very easy to eat, it's very delicious. Korean style chicken, a big favorite these days. Everyone loves it, and including myself. I don't think maybe the westernized Australians like the tteokbokki. The spicy
It's so good though.
Rice cake, the spicy rice cake. But talking about the celebrities eating the food, I know that BTS's Jimin, hashtag army, may have helped with the popularity of like this spicy rice dish, because it was reported after he was seen eating it, there was meal kits sold at 450% on the increase. So, I mean, look at the influence our celebrities have on the food industry in Korea. It's amazing. And now I see shin ramen, kimchi everywhere.
Right. Spicy food is taking the world by a storm, but Koreans haven't been the best with spicy dishes. Like chili peppers were only first brought to Korea from Japan in the late 1500s. The peppers then had more of a sweetness to them rather than spiciness, and it was only after the Korean War when farmers produced spicy cheongyang peppers. But now, why don't you go deeper and tell us the history about when Korean food started getting spicy?
You know, like you mentioned, Korean food is traditionally not that spicy. And even if you look at the royal cuisine, the traditionally very bland, and it's not even salty, it's not spicy.
Right.
If you look at the tteokbokki, the rice cake that Walter mentioned, it's actually soy sauce based, and it's not that spicy at all. And there's several theories on how we started accepting spicier and spicier food into our culture, and you actually mentioned one of them is the Japanese invasion of Korea in 1592. But, you know, it became more and more popular later on throughout history. But there's this other theory of, you know, the Chinese having brought it into Korea after, you know, Columbus brought it in from South America. It just traveled the rest of the world, and it just stuck with Korea. And after 18th century, Confucianism started spreading in Korea as well. And with all these new rituals and the memorial services that people were doing, they wanted to preserve their food. They wanted to preserve it, and salt was expensive.
Right.
So some other options were, you know, making it spicy and preserving it for a longer period of time. And after the Korean War, we needed to preserve food, and because there wasn't a lot.
Right.
And yeah, I think that's how it became popular.
Right, and as you could see on the screen, you could see gochugaru, the peppers there. It's red now, but it was quite surprising for me when I was doing my research that it only became red and spicy, you know, much earlier, not later than expected, right? But eating hotter dishes seems to be a challenge now, or a trend, especially among young people, including myself. And there's even specific Korean lingo referring to people who are good at eating spicy dishes. It's called mepbushim. We'll be telling you what that's about. So here in the studio, Walter, Are you one of the many people in Korea, one of the youngsters,
Yep.
who have this so-called metbushim? Explain to us what metbushim is first, and then tell us about your
Okay, so for people who don't know, it basically means people who can eat the extreme level of spiciness, all right? Now, me, no, not at all. I can eat certain spicy foods, but definitely not the top spice. I do sometimes challenge myself to do it, and I fail very, very terribly.
But why do people want to have so much metbushim?
Well, I know that with at least my female friends that they do it to release a bit of stress. It seems like they're stress release. They're not like me and they eat 2 pizzas instead. I'm that sort of person, but no, a lot of people eat because it's a stress reliever. And it's also like an addiction for them as well. I mean, they eat it and then they get these sort of, I guess the capsaicin, it creates pain in the body, and then body's natural reaction is to release those endorphins, which are pleasure hormones,
right.
and therefore they get hooked on it. But why do you eat spicy food?
Yeah, I think I mentioned to
Are
you
you
guys.
good?
I really love spicy food. I think I have the biggest metbushim in the world. And metbushim in Korean, it's like spicy plus dignity. You have that pride of eating really spicy. And for me, it's like breaking a challenge, you know? The spicier I get, I feel more accomplished. I feel like I achieved something. But of course, I know there are a lot of health drawbacks to this. So what do you guys think are the pros and cons of people like me having metbushim, or the pride of eating spicy foods?
Let's talk about the pros first, because it is exciting. And like Walter mentioned, it is a stress relief. And actually, spiciness is not a flavor. It's actually a type of pain.
It is, yeah.
And so you're causing pain on your stomach. And as you do that, your body releases kind of the different types of hormones like endorphin and adrenaline. It's like working out pretty much. But you're doing that to yourself. And so you feel happier and less stressed afterwards. And it's delicious. So it's great. And also the whole metbushim, the dignity, the pride. Your friends will applaud you and you will be a hero.
I mean, look at the people on the screen. They look so happy eating all these like very spicy dishes. We're seeing a lot of YouTube creators try it out. I know you were one of them. We saw in the mukbang trend episode you having the buldaknoodles, the spicy noodles. So Walter, why don't you walk us through the cons then?
Do they look happy? Do they really look happy? Maybe on the outside they look very happy, but on the inside is a very different story. I'm talking stomach ulcers, I'm talking intestinal damage, heartburn, reflux, not to mention the next day on the toilet, not to give you too much information about that, you can probably imagine. I've seen tons of those videos before, and like you said, I have been a part of it, and it was not fun at all for people like me. So yes, the cons are your health. Look after your intestines and whatever.
Definitely.
Yes.
There's a lot of health drawbacks for sure, but it's no doubt that this is a global trend. So we're now going to be including a global millennial in our talks. He's actually a content creator itself, and he loves spicy food. But to find out more, wait a minute after this. We're now going to include a content creator who loves trying out spicy Korean food and filming them for people to see. It's Max Abrams, also known as Max Not Beer on various social media platforms. Great to have you here, Max.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, Max, you heard us talk about how many millennials and Gen Z in Korea have metbushim, or are really proud about eating spicy dishes. So I wonder, is it like that abroad? Like, is there any similar lingo or concepts for people who feel superior or really proud because they can eat really spicy dishes?
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure that there is a word as concise as metbushim to sort of describe this global phenomena, but what I do think is certainly true is that various cultural groups will take a lot of ownership and pride over their spiciest of dishes as sort of representative of the culture itself. And I think a reason they do that is because there's a degree of exclusivity around it, right? If it's super spicy and not everyone can have it, the dish itself gets to remain something that's ours, something that we get to treasure. And while of course, people are invited to come and enjoy it. Not everyone can handle it, right? And so I think that it's a very special phenomena that cultures get to hold on to sort of their spiciest challenges, if you will, as something that's like pretty sacred to the culture itself. The other unique thing too is that Korean spice is very different from Indian spice, which is different to Ethiopian spice, which is different to Mexican spice, and so on and so forth. So it's not to say that if you have meppushim in the Korean sense that you'll be great at devouring the spiciest Mexican food or the spiciest Indian food. The cultures themselves get to remain separate in that sense and sort of engage in a little bit of competition with one another to see who can really out-spicy one another. And I think that's something really special and fun that only food can provide us.
Right, and speaking of exclusivity, everyone wants to see how far that person can go when it comes to like really spicy food. That's why I believe a lot of content creators like yourself and our Walter right here has tried eating spicy food on air. Could you share like the most spicy dish you've had so far and what really motivated you to keep doing that?
The spiciest dish I've had so far is probably 닭발, 아니면 낙지볶음. But the highest level.
Oh, really?
Well, it was the highest level in New York when I had it, which is to say that it was probably like the second level in Korean spice, because the levels themselves are very different if you go abroad, which is worth mentioning. The spiciest level in America is truly probably like the second level if you get like pakkarbi or something here in Korea. I tried it. My followers were really curious to see what my reaction would be, and I'm making a lot of food content these days. I thought before that experience that I had meppushim, that I would be pretty good at it. And then shortly after the eating experience, that quickly faded, and I will most likely never do it again. Unless there's a pretty special opportunity, because the aftermath of that situation was not so great. Yeah.
Well, I actually recommend something for you if you're going to go out there. There is I actually tasted a very spicy donkas, and it was actually a challenge. Now, if you look it up, I'll let you know later on. It was a challenge to do it. I had this much, and I was sweating within seconds.
Yeah. It's meant to be a stress relief, and then I just end up more stressed than I've ever been. So I don't know.
Those are definite downsides for sure. And 닭발, for our foreign viewers who don't know, they're chicken feet. They're marinated in really spicy sauce. 낙지볶음, like squid, you mix it with spicy sauce as well. But moving on to my last question. Max, in your opinion, what initially hooked foreigners to Korean spicy food, and why do you think people want to try K-food out so much?
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned earlier, certainly the proliferation of Korean cultural products such as K-dramas, K-pop certainly generated interest abroad. But when you think about it, from my perspective, food is the lowest barrier of entry for foreign fans to engage with Korean culture. I was lucky enough to come and study here in Korea, but for those who can't afford that experience, food is one of the easiest ways to feel as though they're akin to the Korean experience, that they get to enjoy the same things their idols do. And so nowadays, with the spread of Korean ingredients abroad, it's very easy for someone to find gochugaru, to find red pepper powder, sugar, soy sauce, and make their own version of tteokbokki, and feel the closest they'll perhaps ever feel to Korea. So I think regardless of what's getting popular, be it makeup, skincare, K-pop, K-dramas, it all kind of leads back down to the food that for some people is the most accessible Korean cultural product for them to try.
And you build an immediate connection.
Yes.
All right,
and it becomes a memory. So, yeah.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much, Max. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you all for having me.
All right. Max mentioned a lot of very interesting and fun points there, but which fascinated you the most?
I think it's when he mentioned the whole exclusivity thing. It makes you feel, I guess,
Exclusive.
superior. You're up there.
Right.
You can have different types of food and other people can't. I mean, like I mentioned, I have no pride in that area. So good for you guys. Good for those who are up there in the exclusive
You're in the exclusive club.
Yeah.
What about you, Walter?
Yeah, like I actually tail end on what Niall said. I remember when all my friends would like brag about, oh, I can eat the hottest Thai curry, and I didn't really care. It's like, you try Korean food, I bet you it's hotter. But then Thai people would argue that, I think.
Right.
Because different types.
The palate's different too. I think the matter of spice, the degree is different. It tastes different for sure. But before we continue our talks, let's also hear what our global viewers viewers had to say and whether they enjoy spicy food. Take a look at the screen to find out what a few had to say. I'll read them out. Leonard Vun said the spiciest dish I tasted in the Korean spicy stir-fried squid dish in Seoul. I think this is nakjibokum, right? And I don't know how people can eat it, but it's very popular. Steph Manfredi said the spicy things I had were pepperoni pizza and Korean barbecue chicken, all right? And Gazelle said, I like spicy food, but there's a difference between a good burn and torture. I hear eating very spicy food can release stress. Very spicy food gives me stress instead. And that's what our Max said as well, you know. He was like, you know, this is usually for, you know, for you to relieve stress, but instead you gain stress by eating so much spicy food.
Exactly.
And I think this is a good segue into what we can say for our final thoughts. Where would you guys like to see the trend of eating spicy food go?
Well, for me, I think we'd like to see more variety out there for the international market. At the moment, it's very typical, like bibimbap or whatever. I'd like to see, yeah, more spicy dishes out there for many different countries. Now, if you come to Korea and you're not, you know, a big spice fan, but you want to try something spicy, my favorite Korean food is 매운탕. Now,
매운탕.
you argue that it's not.
I know, my facial expression, I couldn't hide it.
like,
That's
it's not
spicy.
that
But 매운 means like spicy.
It means spicy stew.
Spicy stew,
yeah.
right? Fish stew. I think it's great. Yes, it's not the spiciest, but it's really good. But if you really are a spicy fan, eat those chicken feet or the pig's trotters.
Yeah.
They're really, really spicy.
And they're literally called like fire feet.
Right.
Fire, yeah,
Because
yeah.
it tastes like fire.
Exactly.
What about you, Nell? Where would you like to see the trend go?
I mean, I would like to see Korean food become more accessible in all the different countries, not just in the Western ones in the States and in Europe, but you know, places that I've lived in like Morocco and Kenya and such. And I think everybody should be able to enjoy it. And like Max said, it's the first connection you make, and I think it's the connection that's gonna last.
And I'm just saying out of concern, we're not trying to isolate or ostracize people who can't have spicy food. Because
Yeah.
here in the studio,
Yeah.
these two are Korean, but you guys you're not typically good at spicy
Yes,
food.
I'm not good with spicy
And
food.
it's fine. Our intention of today's episode is to really promote what type of Korean food is out there and how we all love food. We can all connect very easily with that. And we'll be here every day from 9:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. Korea time, bringing you topics that young people are talking about. Special thanks to Niall Song
Thank you.
and Walter Lee.
Lovely to be here.
And thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.